2 global challenge wins. So, hey, maybe they have more in common than you'd think based on their countries of origin.
Absolutely. Here we go. And game 1 of our first top 8 match. Federico Camporesi versus Yuma Kinugawa. And there it is. Smeargle, everybody's favorite VGC support icon on the field next to Calyrex Shadow Rider. And Federico showing the Trick Room leads here with the Incineroar and Lunala.
I think we saw the Smeargle led as well the last time we saw Kinugawa, so perhaps seeing a pattern here, but should be a lot of fun. Smeargle creates some interesting situations where, will it go for the fake out, where you get cheekier and try to go for something like a Spore or a Decorate. The last time we saw Kinugawa on stream, match was very quick, where I think both sides are making some deep predictions, so we'll have to see how players choose to start it out this time.
Well, they're going to kick it off with a Terastallization on Smeargle. That's going to be double Ghost for Kinugawa now. No fake out pressure at all from that Incineroar because of the Terastallization, but that is a wasted Terastallization as Federico is not going for the fake out at all. Instead, Spore comes through onto the Lunala as the Calyrex Shadow Rider gets that +2 boost from the nasty plot. Will take a knockoff for it, and that's a clean one-hit KO. That's a trade of a Terra and a Calyrex Shadow Rider for a Spore on Lunala.
Yeah, that's a pretty tough way to start the game here. I mean, you do at least get to put a restricted Pokemon to sleep, but you're definitely hoping for more of a trade than that. The attack rising, so that's not going to be very helpful from the Moody boost either. And wow, that's a tough spot here where we saw last time that Kinugawa was in stream. You don't necessarily need the restricted Pokemon to be driving the offense, and this time Zamazenta is present, able to threaten some big damage on Incineroar with a potential body press, but not the way you wanted to start out there. Maybe getting a little too aggressive on the first turn of the match, and this time it didn't pay off.
Yeah, Kinugawa showing how aggressive he can be playing here, and Federico calling the bluff there. Definitely seeing that there is the option for Ghost Terra, and seeing that, Kinugawa has shown that maybe he was going to try and sneak in a nasty plot or some other boost here, just going on the offensive.
Yeah, and as you mentioned last time, is on Decorate now no longer so threatening with the Zamazenta next to it, where defense is really the stat you want to be boosting. So tricky position. It would be an option to maybe do more damage to Lunala with boosted attack, but not the way you want to do things. And with Miraidon coming in, there'll be no more threat of Spore for now.
Yeah, the Spores are done for Smeargle. Just that Lunala asleep because of it, as Miraidon sets the electric terrain. Kinugawa going for a prediction there for the body press onto the Lunala, hoping to catch it in a Terastallization or just a switch there, but that's going to do nothing, but you do get the Decorate boost onto the Zamazenta, so those heavy slams will be hurting from the Zamazenta, but that's about it.
Yeah, the shoe kind of on the other foot. We saw every prediction hitting the last time that Kinugawa was on stream. A little bit of a slower start to his set, missing another attack. And things are a little bit awkward here. Or even with the boosted stats now, you can do more damage to Lunala, sort of, but still have to break that Shadow Shield, right? And by the time you get there, likely it'll have woken up. So with now the Miraidon also threatening some damage, the Zamazenta forced to protect.
Well, and another protect there from Zamazenta, which will prevent the Electro Drift damage from connecting. That does open up another Decorate possible for this Smeargle. So now at +4, those heavy slams are going to start hurting, but still has not broken the Shadow Shield, which means that this Lunala can at least take one as it wakes up here, finally awakens and fires off a Moongeist beam now into the Ghost-type Smeargle. That's going to set it right down to Focus Session. Kinugawa has not gotten a lot out of this, went for some really aggressive plays and has just been punished for them by Federico.
Yeah, we see another awkward situation here. Does get the speed boost now, but would be pretty costly to try to take advantage of the speed boost. Would have to lose all those decorates as well as the boost from entering the field there in order to get any Rillaboom back in if it's in the back. Smeargle going to be fleeing instead, giving up that speed boost, and we'll see the final Pokemon for this first game.
Yeah, going to remove the speed boost itself as Rillaboom will switch in here to reset the terrain. Has to make sure that Miraidon is not at full strength. Another Protect trying to come out from the Zamazenta, but it fails. And Federico has not taken damage yet in this game. Big Electro Drift into the Zamazenta will not pick up the KO, but it doesn't need to right now because all that Zamazenta has been doing is protecting. and the Moongeist Beam is not doing any damage at all into the Rillaboom, and this game one has been a disaster for Kinugawa.
Yeah, at least now, I guess Rillaboom sort of threatening some offense. You could fake out the Miraidon, I guess, but this is messy, and then we'll see that fake out, so perhaps Zamazenta will finally attempt to swing.
Yeah, there is some damage onto the Miraidon and a body press to follow it up. Not enough to pick up the KO, though, as Lunala will fire back with a Moongeist Beam into the Zamazenta after the Electro Drift comes so close to picking up the KO there, but that one turn of grassy terrain recovery protecting the Zamazenta for this turn and this turn only.
Yeah, I mean, things may be getting more interesting. Miraidon now weakened enough where perhaps one weaker attack could knock it out, but then again in a situation you're probably going to need to protect the Zamazenta, and either you have to make a risky read, which looks like we're going to see. Instead, Grassy Glide breaking the Shadow Shield, so if Miraidon maybe attacks the Rillaboom, we could still see some action, but no, it's going to knock out the Zamazenta, and this Gambit's not going to pay off either.
Yeah, I really like this from Federico. Kinugawa has been going for some very aggressive plays, and Federico has been playing so safely. Just not going for anything risky at all, which means that Kinugawa can't find the opportunities to break through. And if you go for those aggressive plays and your opponent is, doing the defensive wall thing, there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like both these sides are kind of just playing at very different tempos, though. We used to sometimes talk about like the idea of leveling and kind of like, oh, I know you're going to do this, so then I will do that, and kind of like how far through that process your opponent's going to think. And I felt like Federico just never really needed to move down that line, right?
Yep.
We're like, well, my simplest and safest play is never getting punished, so like, why would I do anything crazy? Kinugawa perhaps a little excited after doing so well on stream previously in that first game, going for the fireworks right again, but we see the other way that can turn out in that first game here, where taking a bunch of big risks that don't really pay off, and not even really getting close to getting into that first game.
Yeah, no explosions in game one, just a bunch of duds coming out here. The one thing that really happened was this first turn. The knockoff into the Calyrex just meant that the Calyrex went down immediately, and that was so much offense off the table for Kinugawa. Even after +4, after 2 decorates onto the Zamazenta, there was nothing that, Kinugawa was able to do with it, because its primary attack uses its defense stat, and we didn't even see a heavy slam come out there before the Zamazenta went down. So you can see how the Smeargle can sometimes get trapped next to a Pokemon like the Zamazenta that isn't a really strong target for that Decorate. And Kinugawa had no safe switches. There was no way to bring that Smeargle out and reset anything without risking really important pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways he's really bet the game on that first turn. And I think after that you kind of have to throw out what happened a little bit, where to me it just looked like a player was like, all right, well, I know that there aren't any reasonable lines that lead to me winning the game, so now I'm just going to take even more risks and hope that I get exactly the mistake I need to pull myself back in. I was considering thinking, maybe it would have been different if we'd seen, instead of the body press into that Lunala slot, breaking the Shadow Shield, maybe you can do something that decorates. I don't know that that actually leads to a win, given how big the deficit there was. So I kind of get it, right? Where you need to get given something in order to pull back. I'll be curious to see this adjustment. Do you take a bigger risk and just hope you get the read right this time, or are you trying to play a little more conservatively? Because there's now this elimination round, right? Kinugawa's had an incredible tournament so far, has only lost the game we saw previously on stream, but one more loss here would knock him out of a tournament.
Yep, one more loss would knock Kinugawa out of the tournament and mean that he would not be the first Japanese player to win an international championship. But Kinugawa has decided that Smeargle and Calyrex are still the choice here, and matching up much better against this Whimsicott and Urshifu lead here. Smeargle does not go for a Terrestrialization. That remains safe. Goes for the fake out onto the Choice Band Urshifu. Entirely safe choice there, as the Astral Barrage will come out from Calyrex Shadow Rider. Whimsicott's Light Screen will protect both of these Pokemon quite a bit here, but with the Life Orb, that still makes it a 2-hit KO on both of those Pokemon.
Well, the Smeargle likes to go quick. We see the speed boost once again. I think there'll be some question whether it actually gets to use it, where I feel like kind of the only option now is a Tailwind and then probably a Surging Strikes into the Smeargle slot to avoid a Spore, which is interesting now on the Kinugawa side. Like previously you would have had to use Follow Me. You kind of have the implied to Follow Me by the threat of the Spore now, or if you wanted to, you could probably even switch the Calyrex out, play a little bit differently, because I think allowing a Tailwind here and taking some KOs could be really dangerous, given your opponent would then get some free switches.
Yeah, but this is the absolute safest play here to go for the Tailwind on the Whimsicott, while the Smeargle Follow Me is That's going to protect the Calyrex. As you can see, it only takes 2 hits of the Surging Strikes to knock out that Smeargle, but critically, Calyrex is still up and will be able to fire back an Astral Barrage into both of these Pokemon, which should be able to pick up the KO on both of them as well. That means that Kinugawa will finally get his +2 boost. Ooh, actually Whimsicott survives just a little bit. I had done my math incorrectly. Means only a +1 boost to that Calyrex.
Yeah, I think much better not to get that knockout, though. I think the double knockout there would probably be a little bit scary. It does still leave the option of Whimsicott switching out and having a late-game tailwind for a second round. But this is sort of an interesting situation now, where even though that knockout was given up, you do have the speed control on Federico's side of the field. And, okay, well, this is a Life Orb Calyrex, right? It's not a Focus Sash Calyrex. Yeah. So now that it's already damaged itself, the Life Orb doesn't have a Focus Sash to protect itself. Potentially a single attack could knock it out here between the two of these Pokemon.
Well, Lunala coming out for Federico. That is a really good Pokemon to have and under Tailwind, because it will still be able to outspeed that Calyrex and threaten back with the Moongeist Beam. Kinugawa was just going to go ahead and scout out here to see what Federico wants to do, instead of just giving a free turn to the Lunala and Whimsicott team by Astral Barraging into a Wide Guard. Whimsicott also trying to Encore to force Kinugawa into those Astral Barrages, but will go into the Protect as the U-turn will finish off the Whimsicott, remove that Encore threat from the table, and allow Kinugawa to bring in his final Pokemon here.
A nice little play there. Also kills a turn of the Tailwind, rather, perhaps more helpfully, where, if you can get through this, you're looking at a pretty good spot. You have a single level of boosted special attack. Of course, you would love to pick up that knockout instead with the Calyrex if you could, but getting Whimsicott off the field is a big deal. I think otherwise that would have forced a Terastallization in order to gain Encore immunity. This leaves the options a little bit more open for Kinugawa.
Well, here comes Miraidon to set the electric terrain and activate the electric seed. Will also be boosting the electric type damage coming out from that Raging Bolt that Kinugawa was so effective with earlier today. Now standing alongside the Calyrex and providing 2 potentially strong offensive threats that Federico is going to have to worry about.
Yeah, in a scary position too. All the Pokemon on that side of the field likely to be much quicker than their opponents thanks to the Tailwind for another 2 turns. Rillaboom in the back is a factor here, likely going to see it again. Turn that terrain off, reduce the damage a little bit, and then have fake out pressure for the final turn of Tailwind.
Yep, there is that grassy terrain being reset by the Rillaboom. Like you mentioned, that cuts some of the special attack out of Miraidon's stat pool, and the Raging Bolt will go for a Protect itself, trying to stall as many of these turns of Tailwind as possible. But the Draco Meteor was targeted at the Calyrex, and even without the electric terrain, deals so much damage to that Rillaboom, and a double target into that slot means that this Moongeist Beam will be able to pick up the KO right away on Rillaboom. And that's going to mean that this Calyrex and Raging Bolt are the final 2 Pokemon for Kinugawa.
Going down easily with that Assault Vest there. I feel like his poor Rillaboom all weekend, switching in, getting knocked out. Does do its job as far as changing the terrain there, but maybe hoping for a little more, right? Where the advantage of getting that Whimsicott knockout would have been, you get the fake out, you can at least stall out the Tailwind, don't have to worry about a second one. But the final turn of his Tailwind, pretty scary here. Yeah. The positive end of it, if you are Kinugawa, is that you do have the Miraidon locked into Draco Meteor, going to have that reduced special attack for the remainder of the game. But I think even at -2, neither of these Pokemon are going to take this super well without a Terastallization.
Yeah, even at -2, super effective damage into the Raging Bolt and just big damage onto the Calyrex. And Federico has options here. The Wide Guard means that the option of just coming in and clicking Astral Barrage is not so easy for Kinugawa. That does mean that there would only be the Draco Meteor coming out from the Miraidon, but that may just be enough to finish off this game.
Yeah, and once again, there's an awkward situation where that Shadow Shield isn't broken, right? Probably going to take 3 or 4 hits to reasonably knock this Pokemon out. And, even with these special attack drops from the Miraidon, if you're ignoring it for that long, it's going to deal a significant amount of damage. And, Lunala's damage isn't irrelevant either.
Yeah, Lunala definitely can deal damage, especially when it's threatening 4 times super effective damage onto the Calyrex, as well as a potential Fairy Terastallization and super effective damage back on the Raging Bolt with Moonblast as well.
Looks like we are going to see this Terastallization here. So we saw some incredible calls by Kinugawa the last time we saw him on stream. If he doesn't protect this predict this turn correctly, his tournament is probably going to be over.
That will be it, and then Federico Camporesi will be moving on to the top 4. Here comes the Terrestrialization out of Kinugawa as well. That is the Fairy Terra on the Lunala and the Dark Terra on the Calyrex. So we'll be able to resist Moongeist beams, but be weak now to Moonblast from Lunala. There's the Thunderclap. Thunderclap connects onto Lunala. It knows that it's going to be an offensive attack here. Draco Meteor connects onto Raging Bolt and picks up the KO, even at -2. Raging Bolt goes down. Calyrex needs a miracle here to make something happen on this final turn of Tailwind. There is the Moongeist beam that will be resisted by the Calyrex thanks to the Dark Terra type, and firing back an Astral Barrage here. That's going to be good damage, but the light screen is still up. It's not enough damage. Just a little bit to the Miraidon and, of course, to the Lunala after the Terrestrialization. And that Whimsicott with that light screen means that Kinugawa just doesn't have the damage.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no way. The light stream's going to expire now, but I feel like even a double critical hit, probably not quite enough. And there's still the threat of that wide guard. Just too much going wrong here. Astral Barrage going to come down, but I can't imagine this is going to be enough.
Yeah, not enough damage,
close,
but it was so close. Just a little bit more damage would have been enough to pick up the KO on both. Draco Meteor does not pick up the KO, but Lunala right behind it with the Moonblast will knock Kinugawa out of the tournament, and Federico Camporesi will advance to our semifinals. His best performance at an international championship in the Masters division to date.
Yeah, very decisive win against an excellent player. Really dominated that first game and then played exactly as he needed to in the second. You know, had a pretty big advantage there. Played very safely in that second to final turn there, where kind of no matter what his opponent did, I think he would have stayed enough ahead where he was in a great position there. You know, barring a double critical hit would have been a little scary there, but I mean, if that's the